meeting of the Franklin County IDA. Time is 1:04. And first order of business is roll call.
Okay, Sherry Boye,
Yes.
James Ellis,
Present.
Stephen Ehrman is not present at the moment. Madeline Fleury,
Here.
Justice Martin,
Present.
Archie McKee,
Here.
Nate Manette is not present. Also present, Jeremy Evans, Maria Bourgeois, Russ Kenyon, and Paul Ellis. Is that everybody? Okay,
Pleasure. Before we begin, is there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Jim, we do need to go into executive session for the IDA, and the purpose of that would be for the discussion of the financial or credit history of a person or corporation, and also for the proposed sale of property.
And we'll do that after we're done with the business. Public comment. Anybody with a public comment?
are you gonna do a motion to accept the agenda, Jim?
I'm sorry.
Motion to accept the agenda.
Motion to accept.
Make the motion.
Made by Justice Martin. Second.
I'll second.
Second, Madeline. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Now we'll see if anybody from the public is here and they wish to make a comment, or anyone here in the room wish to make a comment. If not, we'll move on to the next item. Previous minutes were sent to us in email form. Is there any changes or additions to the minutes from the last meeting? No. August 10th, 24. August 24, I want to explain this special session. Hearing none, we'll assume that a motion is in order to approve those minutes for both meetings, August 10th, 24.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Justice, second.
I'll second.
Second by Madeline. Discussion? Hearing nothing to the contrary, we'll assume the motion has been moved. All those in favor of accepting minutes of August 24, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? The ayes have it. Bills and communications, Chair.
No, not today.
Okay. Committee reports, unless anybody has anything to the contrary, I think we can dispense with committee reports unless there's something new. Yes.
Yes, just want to mention that we had a governance meeting on the 24th of August,
Okay.
mainly to discuss the retreat for the board. And a survey was sent out. I did receive some responses, although I didn't receive responses from everybody. And we are working on finalizing the agendas, and also a time and a place needs to be discussed. I'm going to be more towards October, like the beginning of October, if that is going to work for everybody. And it will probably be in the afternoon. So if anybody objects to any of that, just let me know. But I will send out an email with a tentative agenda, time, and location,
Very good.
if that's okay.
Thank you.
Madeline, this is Archie. Did you receive my response? I never know one way or
I
the
rec-
other whether or not they go through.
I received an email from you, but there wasn't anything attached to it. So if you meant to attach something, it didn't come.
Okay. All right.
So thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee reports anybody wish to make? If not, President's report.
Hello, everybody. Just a quick synopsis. I've been able to meet with pretty much all of the board members. I did have an opportunity only to speak briefly with Nate. So I still need to follow up with him. It's very informative. As I indicated probably to a number of you, what my goal is with providing these reports in the future is to be able to provide very concise explanation as to where we stand financially. Has been the practice for a number of years. Typically, the board doesn't have a complete accurate picture of where things stand, except for once a year, after the audit is completed. Partially that is because we have to do year-end journal entries to bring everything current. What my goal is going to be in getting everything up to speed between now and the end of the year is that by the end of the year and starting off in the new year, my plan is to be able to do full accrual accounting on a monthly basis. So we'll have accurate information right up to date as best as possible. Having said that, I don't want to leave the board with the impression that the information in the financials is really out of whack. The obvious areas I think most people look at is, where do we stand financially, and the typical eyesight goes for the cash balance. As you will have recognized in our financials, more with the EDC, we've been using cash. There's been a lot of program activity, especially with CARES Act. I've had communications with both Russ and Rachel in depth about turnaround time on reimbursements from grants, and we anticipate having an inflow of cash in the last quarter of the year, sizable amount. So I know there's been concern and there's been comments about the cash balance dipping below, I think, $1 million for the first time. And from my perspective, given what the mission is of this organization, I think that's a good thing. When I was the interim CEO a number of years ago, before Jeremy came on board, we had $2 million sitting in the bank on a consistent basis, not being put to work for the businesses in the county. So to me, that was a far greater evil in my mind, because the mission of this organization is to help businesses, and we can't do it if we're just sitting on the cash in a checking account. But I'm also a person that likes to make sure that we have money flowing back in as quickly as it's flowing out. So my communication with Russ and Rachel will be fairly consistent in finding out when money's flowing back in. And between now and the end of the year, it's my goal to get the chart of accounts in a proper shape to handle the expansion and the number of grants that we have. Like I said, the information isn't too far out of whack. It's just sometimes we might need to break things down. I think I mentioned to a number of you, my goal is if we have, a broad category of grants, underneath that, we might have an Energize grant, a Restore New York grant, a CARES grant, and underneath those grants, we have sub-recipients. And I want to be able to produce information where we can pull out a report by recipient, by grant program, and by total grants in addition to total revenues. So there's a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done in the chart of accounts. The other main objective that I have in preparation for the new year is QuickBooks, which has been the program we've used and I've used personally with a lot of different clients that I've worked with, is now forcing all of their customers to move to an online environment. You can no longer buy for 2023. You can no longer buy software that you can load onto your PC. It's all cloud-based. And the online version of QuickBooks is significantly more, it's significantly different. It doesn't work in the same way that anybody that's worked with QuickBooks in the past and is familiar with on a desktop version. It works entirely different in the online version. So there'll be a little bit of a learning curve there ahead of time. Like I said, I've looked over the financials. I had pulled up the bank statements. last week when I visited the bank. And, you know, I don't see any immediate concerns whatsoever. It's my plan to be able to not just put these financial reports in front of you in the future and let you look at them and try to figure it out on your own. It's my intention that I will walk the board through everything, and I want to make sure that everybody's questions are going to be answered. And so I will welcome any questions on the reports. Right now, it might be a little bit of a challenge because I'm getting up to speed on it, but I want to make sure that the board has a very strong, highest comfort level they've ever had with the financials. And that's my goal between now and the end of the year.
Thank you, Paul. Very commendable.
Anybody have any questions or? Okay, I like to make money, so I'm going to stay on making sure the inflows are coming back in as much as we're getting it out, so. All right,
Thank you.
you.
Yep.
Thanks. Back to this treasurer's report. Are there any concerns or anything that we should be made aware of?
you know, like I said, my most immediate concern is just where our cash balances, and I don't see any issues.
In my conversation with Paul, being a non-accountant type, I really want to know two things. One, what's the burn rate? In other words, how much does it cost us every month to do this? The second thing I hope we'll be able to come up with, hoping, is to come up with a reasonable explanation of how much money we have left to do business with. I agree with that part. Having a bunch of cash in the bank doesn't, the checking account doesn't do us any good. And we'd welcome any suggestions you may have in terms of short-term investments or things like that to scarf a little bit of interest out of it too.
So I'll comment on that. One of the things that I had helped the IDA and LDC out with previously was doing some CD investments, and that was back when interest rates were starting to head back up. Obviously, the business environment in the country changed, and we went the other way, and it didn't really make a lot of sense to be doing any investments, because even your CD rates were paying, you know, so low that it didn't make a lot of sense to make a move. With public funds like this, the IDA funds in particular, and the EDC, we're limited in what we can invest in. Generally, CDs are our only option according to the state controller's guidance on investment activity. So we don't have a lot of options, but certainly putting some CDs out to bid at some point would be advisable. It'll give us some additional funds, but I'm not yet prepared to make any recommendations or put a CD plan into action until I know what my inflow is going to be on the recovery of grant monies, and understand what we might have in the pipeline that still has to go out. So once I get a better handle on cash flow, I think at our next board meeting, I'll be able to make some recommendations as to how we could move forward on doing some minor investments.
Very good. Any other questions or additions to the discussion? If not, this treasurer's report. To adopt.
Motion to adopt the treasurer's report.
Motion by Justin. Second. Second by Archie to approve the treasurer's report. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Treasurer's report's adopted. All and unfinished business.
I have one item.
Yes, sir.
As of yesterday, the executive order that's been in place and repeatedly renewed related to open meetings law expired and was not extended by the governor. So So that means going forward, we need to make sure we are either complying with the law the way it was, we were used to it a couple of years ago, or adopt a resolution that allows us to do video meetings in a different way. Today, for example, the only thing that, how we would have done it in the past is just make sure that we noticed that Sherry and Archie were attending remotely. And they just have to be comfortable with people knowing that they're doing it remotely and advertise it as such. The other option is to pass a resolution that allows us to have people participate remotely as long as the majority of board members are in person in an advertised location. And so we've been doing a great job complying with the law over the last couple of years. But I just want to make sure the board was aware that the order is now lapsed, and we need to make a couple adjustments, but we'll be prepared for that. Make sure that we're complying in our October meeting.
Very good.
And we'll share more details just so everyone's remembers what all that looks like.
A question, is that a governance committee thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
This falls within the shoulda, woulda, coulda category. And
What's that?
Actually, I said this falls within the shoulda, woulda, coulda category. I was
Woulda.
actually planning to attend in person this meeting, but then I saw an email from Maria saying that meeting was to be via Zoom. And I obviously misinterpreted that to mean that it was only to be via Zoom. So I apologize for that.
It's okay.
We'll eat your donut.
Yeah.
All right.
They're good too, Arch. Great numbers.
The only unfinished business, I think.
Okay, moving on to new business. You all have in front of you a 2023 draft budget message. And I'll do that.
Yeah, this is really just a high level discussion about the budget, some of our goals. Really, we are hoping to get your feedback about things that you're interested in, priorities you might have. And but all is going to lead us through this discussion. And this is high level enough that we can do it all right now. We don't have to separate it between the two agencies.
So, just to kind of remind everybody, in the past, I've worked as treasurer for Lake Placid and Saranac Lake. I had primary responsibility for developing budgets in both communities, in excess of $20 million. Typically, what I would do would be to first do a budget calendar. Jeremy and I had discussed that. He was familiar with how I did it in Saranac Lake. So I just feel budget calendar can kind of keep us on track, make sure we meet all of our benchmark deadlines, make sure we can get the budget adopted by our October 12th meeting, so it doesn't require a special meeting. And that will allow sufficient time for it to get into Paris. So then I kind of reverse engineer the timeline. And again, everything's tentative, but typically I like to kick things off by trying to get board input and feedback as to, things that they might feel need to be given more attention or questions on, or kind of just open up a discussion as to how we might invest monies if anybody has a particular area of interest that they'd like to see us kind of focus in on. So it's an opportunity to open up that discussion. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the draft message. Did some work and spoke with Jeremy and worked with Jeremy as far as our economic outlook. And I think we're going to be confronted with some really big challenges. Right now, we're dealing with inflation. We're going to be dealing with an escalating interest rate environment and ultimately looking at what could be between a moderate and possibly a severe recession. Obviously, taking into account what the macro environment might be helps better position us in planning ahead and being proactive as to how we might help businesses most get through some difficult times that possibly could be occurring over the next year or two. So I just kind of throwing that all out there to try to get board members' feedback and different things on how we might be able to spend money in certain areas or in certain ways that could benefit the business community.
I'll just add that if you recall, we've been trying to improve our budget process every year. And we've also been trying to get better at establishing what our goals and major activities will be each year. We're hoping with this budget, we're actually bringing those two things in a little bit more into alignment, because we haven't really had a discussion at the board level about what our goals are and how the budget can help us implement those goals. That discussion's usually been happening later on at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year. So that's why with this draft, we've just reiterated what our existing goals are, so that we keep those in mind as we have a discussion. I bring those two things together a little bit more than they have been.
I'm especially interested in this. On page 1, beginning of page 2, companies with high levels of debt, and the analysis of bankruptcy information by Franklin County, or for Franklin County.
I'm losing my hearing. I can't hear what's being said.
Just got to speak up a little bit, Jim.
I'm referring, Archie, to the draft budget message. End of page 1, beginning of page 2.
Oh, okay.
And I'm interested in the analysis that was done for Franklin County for the two periods that are listed there. And it really struck me when I realized how the bankruptcies fell over a 5-year period that followed the recession, and 71% down to only 4 Chapter 7 filings. So I think that it begs the question in the next paragraph. Two key components of a business's survival in a recession is preparation for the downturn by deleveraging to the greatest extent possible and strategic planning and how to effectively ride out the downturn. That is the key, really. And I think that we need 2 forecasters, or 1 forecaster here, or 2 forecasters, whatever it's going to take for us to be able to look at these things, especially with respect to new information coming into us as to who wants to borrow money and for what reason. And I think our goal ought to be try to save as many businesses as we can without putting ourselves out of business. And that's really the whole idea, I think. But am I correct in that? Yeah. And that's what I think we need to do.
One of the biggest things that I hear and keep hearing, regardless of what type of business people you're talking to, is the inability for them to hire staff to do the work. And I think anything that the IDA could possibly do to help businesses in hiring staff would be a good thing to develop.
So maybe we ought to consider the possibility of having Paul and or Russ come up with some thoughts for the next meeting as to what possibilities there are out there. I don't know that.
Mhm.
And whether or not we can leverage some of our other programs, especially the grant programs, for the purpose of assisting the hiring process. But I tend to be a little bit hard nosed about that. We can do whatever we can to help people. But it won't happen until people decide they want to go to work.
Exactly.
And that's the question. That's the dance we gotta do. So,
I think, and I don't know how we would approach it, because obviously this is a nationwide issue. But I really think that somehow we need to figure out if there's a way in which we could survey employees who leave an organization, regardless of its size or product or service. Because obviously there's a level of dissatisfaction that exists out there that is hard for people to say it's worth going to work. And the bottom line is it might resolve itself as we fall upon harder economic times and people are forced to work. But I think in order to really solve this issue, we really need to understand what's the problem causing people to say, you know what, I don't need to be here, I'm leaving. And it's happening everywhere. Doesn't matter where you go.
Russ, do you know if workforce development
that's what I was
board
gonna ask.
tracks or talks to folks on related to this?
I wouldn't say overtly. I mean, we do have a survey that we do, but I'm sure Department of Labor is a partner,
I think that
probably
might
does
be
more communication.
a
Good
good place
start.
for us to go is because that's their expertise.
That's
and that
right.
might be a suggestion we can make. It's
Because we need
Finding
to understand the problem before we
Right.
try to fix it.
Right, and that's really the place, that's the whole question is, why are you not working?
Right, because the symptom is people aren't staying and aren't working. That's a symptom. What's the problem? What's causing them to do that? We have to get to the core of that.
And a lot of that, of course, goes back to state and federal procedures that allow people to continue to receive money without being put back to work. Yeah, workfare is gone. That was a good program at the time.
Mhm.
Okay, very good. Any other questions?
yeah. And then this doesn't end today.
Sorry.
You're welcome to contact us and ask us questions, say, hey, what about this? What about that? But is there anything? Yeah, send your comments to me and questions and we'll make sure they're answered and incorporate your thoughts. But anything while we're all together still, like big picture questions or comments you have about what we should be thinking about as we develop these budget?
I just have like a general
Yeah.
question. So since we don't have the tourism money that we had last year, since we're kind of adjusted to that this year, what do you see next year? We're mainly going to be focused on getting grant money. Is grant money available? Do we know that? And
Grant money is available. We've had some discussions as a staff on what some of those programs could look like that we might want to apply for. The biggest priority will be to finish what we have.
Right.
Because we have so many right now that we're administering that have, some of them taken longer than they should have. So we got to close them out. Otherwise, we're just going to keep building,
so close them out, you mean receive the money?
get the project
reimbursement,
done,
right?
get reimbursed.
Okay, so you gotta
close
finish the
things out.
product or
Yeah, we don't
project
wanna-
before you can get reimbursed.
Yes,
money, okay.
exactly.
Alright.
So we want to make sure we're not just stacking up new funding
And not
programs
closing.
and not closing out old ones.
Right,
So,
but it doesn't mean we're going to hold off and,
Yeah.
starting to pursue.
no, because there's a lag time.
Right.
Right, so if there's grant opportunities that we want to look at in 2024, we need to be applying in 2023. Well, it's not a lag, it's a lead. There's a lead time with this stuff, so. Yeah, so we'll be able to talk about that in more detail. That's a really important aspect we need to think about for next year.
Do you want to mention the micro enterprise or?
Well, there's a number. Micro Enterprise is a program that we helped the county administer previously. There might be a couple New York Main Street opportunities that we're looking at. Russ and I have talked about sources of new loan funds. Which is a huge undertaking, but it's a good thing for us to do. So and then there's things related to our properties. There's some new programs related to our industrial properties that the state has announced. Details aren't out yet, so I'm pretty certain that we're gonna want to take advantage of those. Just don't know the details or deadlines yet. So there's a lot of possibilities. We just have to figure out timing and priorities. So we'll try it, not just within the budget. We'll try to lay those out in a list for everybody by topic and what some of those are. So you get a better sense of what's rolling around in our heads.
Very good. Thank you, folks. Now,
I have a question. I see the next scheduled date on the budget calendar is the 22nd. Is that going to be a gathering, a meeting, and
Just for finding.
say again?
That's just a preliminary budget sent to the finance committee, Archie. So it's not a meeting, it's just, here's a first initial draft sent to the finance committee for,
our finance,
our finance.
Yeah.
So that will be a draft, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
The whole idea behind the budget calendar is to send it to finance committee, let them have several days to look it over, have a meeting, discuss it, get more familiar with it, questions, and then go through another rendition of the budget based upon the input and the feedback. And then, perhaps if it's necessary, we'll have another finance committee meeting before sending it to the full board. One of the things that you'll look at on October 5th, and again, this is all tentative. Once the board has the budget, one of the things have always tried to do in the past is not deliver a budget on the same date that we want it to be adopted and approved. I feel that the board always needs to have opportunity to look at it, digest it, question it. I would anticipate our full staff would be available. It would be an opportunity to really go through the budget in great detail for the board. And if there's any revisions that are necessary, we'll prepare them for the next meeting. But like I said, my goal is to have a budget for the board to at least work on and look at and not be forced to adopt it at that particular meeting. So that's why I built in a board work section following the finance committee work at it.
Thank you.
So, and Jeremy's probably more up to speed on it, but both villages in which we did budget work sessions, it was always made known that no action would be taken. It's certainly it's still a public meeting, still has to be noticed. But it's just an opportunity to work on the budget, but no decisions are made at a budget work session. No formal resolutions are adopted at a budget section.
okay, very good. Any other questions? Thank you, everybody, for your input. I think we're ready to go into executive session now.
Yes, and this would be for discussion, financial credit history of a corporation.
Okay. So, we'll have a motion to go into executive session. And note the time, please, Marie. Williams. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So move.
Moved by Archie McKee. Second.
I'll second it.
second by Justice. At the time, we have 139 here as far as the TV is concerned, or the YouTube. 130.
Okay, so what we're gonna do
You're
is,
still, yeah.
we're gonna do a breakout room. So Archie and Sherry, and Maria, make sure you get over to the breakout room.
Okay.
You'll see, you'll get rolled over in a minute. But if you go-
Gary, you're muted, or you were.
Yeah, I said we wait for his invite. There it is.
You see it? Plus, can you? We do now.
I'm gonna wind up,
Well, it's not on right now.
gotta wind up this.
Oh, that's me.
Motion to go out of the executive session.
I'll make the motion.
Second,
How's that? for this?
second by Madeline. Time, please noted, is 2:12 out of executive session. No decisions were made. Therefore, we're back in regular session. And in the agenda, if there is nothing else we need to do, I'm assuming that we'll be ready for adjournment. And the date of the next meeting will be October 12, 2022. Motion to adjourn the IDA meeting.
Make the motion.
Motion by Madeline, second by Justice. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?